Hey there, good evening, everyone. Johnny here, as always, with George. Welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about some real toughness today. Uh, we're going to talk about things that make it tough. I don't really have an opening for today. We're going to talk about toughness. But I will say that on this show, we're going to be talking about real toughness because it's something that you hear a lot of cliches about, not no fake bravado kind of style. We're going to be talking about what it actually takes to be tough. And what is tough? Like what does that mean? Tough. I mean, you got like our photo here at the beginning, is that tough? No, those are two guys like dressed up. Yeah. Two Puerto Ricans dressed up. That's not. Those aren't tough guys, tough guys. But they are tough guys. And I have a little cough, everyone. So if I apologize in advance. But George is here, so he'll take this.
I
Slide.
told John to get that tuberculosis vaccine.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
just yeah. Achoo! I want my mic. But yeah, how are you, George?
I'm fantastic. Just having some fun in the winter wonderland that we call New York.
I tell you, I saw that someone mentioned that they got that you guys are gonna get, well, New York City anyway. I don't know where you are.
New York City,
You
yeah.
guys are always under snow, pretty much. But I think for like 22 inches or something like that.
Yeah, well, last thing I heard was like 18 to 20 or something like, but that's like Long Island. Actually, it's Long Island and New York City
Yeah, yeah.
because we got like a foot and a half that last big storm, and which is there's still about a foot of it out there. And now we're actually, I think we're projected to get about 5 to 8. That's up here,
Feet.
and yeah, yeah, that's what it feels like. And then, but yeah, in the city, they're really gonna get hit hard.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, that's one of the things I really don't miss about New York is that snow. I remember in 1996, we had the huge,
yes,
huge storm, the biggest
I,
one ever.
everybody mentions that one actually.
Oh
It's
yeah,
always mentioned,
it
but
was a big one. And somehow I was working somewhere where I got to work that morning, even though it was snowing a lot. But then I couldn't leave, and I had to stay
yeah,
there.
yeah.
26 inches fell on that storm, and it
Wow,
was
I remember that
epic.
one,
I
man.
remember
Yes.
it very well. But it also seems, don't you feel? And probably this is like one of those things that like everybody says. But when we were younger, it felt like we were always there was always snow, huge
Yeah.
piles of snow on the side of the
Yes.
roads.
Yeah.
It seemed like that was always a thing.
Yeah, you didn't think about it back then. You just
Yeah,
ran outside and you jumped in the snow and you
yeah,
played football in the snow and you did all these
yeah.
things and
I think there's more attention on it right now
oh,
too
of
because of
course. Well,
social
that's the
media,
biggest thing now.
obviously, and everybody has a photo of it. Everybody has their own take on it.
Well, that's the thing because remember back then it was only a new snow was at, like I always say, right, when you watch the news when we were younger, the weather was at the end,
Right.
right? The
Wasn't
weather
even a
was
big
always
deal.
at the end,
Now there's
but
the
now
Weather Channel, a few of them.
yeah, and then now it's like, the news starts and it's like 20 people died. But first, Bill, how's that weather going?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
Today, heads were exploding on the streets of New York randomly. But let's take the weather.
yeah, it's
Are
exactly how
these
it is.
headless people going to get some snow, Tommy? I know I'm terrible. Um, yeah, so I
Oh,
think that part of the challenge with those guys, weather people, is that weather is never really that exciting to begin with, and if you're giving the weather,
you have to make it
you got
exciting.
to make something. You have that lady, the hilarious lady that's outside.
It's like she's
Stay
like
inside, and then two guys in the back
there's two
walking
guys walking.
shorts, in shorts, holding a little bag like they went to 7-Eleven or something. I'm like, and then there's the other one that she's on a boat. She's on a little. She's on a. She's like, yeah, the rain here is great. And then a guy walks in front of her, in front of the camera. He's just in like shorts and stuff. I mean, the water's pretty high for a boat,
Right.
but he's just walking and stuff. It's just freaking hilarious. But yeah, they got to make it interesting.
Yeah.
So you got to be tough to live in New York City. You got to be tough to live in upstate New York, where George lives. You got to be tough to live in Nashville, Tennessee, with all the guitars and picks flying around. I don't know, but you got to be tough, actually, with the hot chicken. Um, and one of the things that I've been talking about on my morning show lately is different ways of approaching things. You know, whether it's a tough, being tough, or what we're going to talk about today, or trying to compete with someone, comparing yourself to someone,
Mm.
living in the past. These are all things that, we all go through, especially as artists, because gosh, I mean, what artist hasn't sat there and thought, damn it, I should have, I could have, I would have, all these things. Um, we all live in that world, but when you are aware of it, then you can be, you won't be the adverse effect of it if you know it, and you can actually then control it. And so one of the things that we try to do on this show and my morning show and George's wellness talk show, we try to enlighten people on things to look out for.
Right.
That we're any better, because I got to look out for things myself, and I make just as many errors as anybody else, or maybe a little bit less, just because I'm a little bit more aware of things. But still, I have to be aware, and that's part of the challenge. And when you're in this business, of show, there's definitely an awareness challenge, because it's very easily you can get blinded by certain things, by people, by people's words, by people's promises, by people trying to direct you in a direction that you don't want to go,
Yeah.
and then try to make you feel like you're doing worse than you are. Have you ever had that? Where people are like, "Ah, you all right?" I remember somebody told us, this was back in our band days. They're like, "Man, you guys are so good. You guys should be playing in, like, bigger places. You guys play in these small rooms to these small," and I remember even back then, still understanding that that was not a nice thing to say.
Right.
'Cause, I mean, we went from an empty room to at least we have a room and people are coming, and it's not
That's right.
not horrible, but they don't see that, and they
No.
make you feel like you're doing a lot worse than you really are, and you got to be tough. And
Yes.
this is the angle that we're looking at here. It's not necessarily tough physically, but it's mentally tough. It's also having the confidence to say things when generally you would be like, I'm not going to say anything, but you got to say it. And if you communicate honestly what you want to say, and you say it in a respectful way with no violence or anything like that, you're going to be better off.
Right.
You're gonna be better off, and it doesn't matter who you're talking to, And I'm gonna read as we go, but go ahead, Joe.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think a couple of things. First of all, there's a there is a respect that you end up earning when you have a toughness to you in terms of making things happen and doing things and having your convictions and stuff like that, because people realize, okay, this person, they are tough and they're doing it and they're out there, whatever. But it's also, and the other thing I wanted to mention also is also being tough is being aware of your own faults,
Mm,
not just dealing with other people, dealing with your own faults,
that's right.
and being able to face your own faults, being able to be tough enough to say, yeah, I procrastinated. I didn't do what I needed to do there. I fell off the wagon. I did this. That's probably, to me, the hardest thing, because there are a lot of people who are tough and they're okay with being tough with other people, but they're not
Mhm,
tough with themselves.
correct. You
And
did
that's a
a
big,
a piece that I just saw that I think I shared, or I saw it,
mhm.
where you talked about responsibility,
Yes, yes,
responsibility in your health.
yes,
Responsibility, but really it's a responsibility in your journey,
right.
and what happens is that, you have a certain idea of what you want to do and what you want to accomplish, and then you start moving on that path, and then you start getting into conversations with people that are trying to motivate you to do something else,
Right.
or to join their wagon, or to jump on
Hmm.
their cause, or whatever the case may be. And it may be a just cause, and it may be a wonderful cause, but it's not your journey.
Right.
And then if you give into that, which I've made that mistake numerous times, if you give into it and you say, all right, yeah, I'll do that, and you find ways to justify it,
Hmm.
like, okay, I'm going to join that band because at least I get to play music and I like playing music. But then you
Right.
realize, boy, I really don't like this music, or I don't like these guys, or I don't like the venues were playing, or whatever the case, whatever it is, you you went against your own integrity. You went,
That's right.
against your self-determinism. And that's where things get challenging. So when people say be tough, that's where that's the hardest toughness you can get.
Yes.
That's the toughest one you can get. In this industry and in this world, you have to be tough, not loud, not arrogant, tough, tough enough to hear no 100 times and still show up the next morning ready to create. Tough enough to sit in rooms where people question your vision, your talent, your worth, and not shrink. The entertainment business will test you. It will test your patience, your confidence, your character. If you can't face confrontation, if you can't handle uncomfortable conversations, you will not last long. If you cannot handle these uncomfortable, and I'm telling you, you are not aware of the uncomfortable conversation is coming until you're right smack in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You just don't know when it's coming, and then you start backpedaling.
Right.
You start using your past experiences to try to get out of something, and you're saying all the wrong things when really in actuality you can just be like, no. I just had that recently with somebody said something. um they said something, I won't go specifics on it,
Mhm.
but they said something about a certain group of people and the way they behave and stuff like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I thought it was a harsh on that particular group of people. And I said, I don't believe that. I don't think that, you can't just label a whole group of people for believing in something
Right.
and for wanting to do so and live their lives, and and um share or join the group or join the experience as much as they want to. Some people are all in,
Mhm.
and some people are half in.
Right.
You can't hate those that are half in, because listen, they're half in. They're here, they're there, they're doing stuff. Okay, so you get, like let's look at like um let's look at I don't know, let's look at a baseball team, for instance, right? So you have the major leagues, right? You know how hard it is to get into the major leagues. Each team only has what, 20, 30 players or something. So it's not like you have a huge pool, and there's millions of people that want to play baseball every
Yeah.
year. They're all in little league, they're all in small, right? So what do you have to do to get to the major leagues? Well, you gotta you gotta be all in.
Yeah.
You can't be half in. You can't even have a single doubt that you're not gonna get there. You can't think to yourself that you are all in. Everything else gets put aside. That's how those guys make it. It's the
That's
same
right.
thing with the music industry.
Yeah.
You don't get to play arenas by by luck.
Mhm.
You know, you have to be, and this is goes for everybody. I know people will give flack to certain people, like, I don't know, Beyonce or Taylor Swift or J Lo or something like that. But if you go behind the scenes, and I've seen a lot of behind the scenes stuff from a lot of these artists and stuff. I saw a behind the scenes from Justin Timberlake.
Mhm.
I'm like, this guy was working his ass off. He was
Right.
there in the morning doing the dance routines, practicing, rehearsing with the band. Then he'd go do an interview. Then he'd come back, do more rehearsals. Then he'd go work out. Then he'd go eat. Then he'd come back and do a rehearsal. Then he's got the show. Then he could. I mean, it was like nonstop to prepare for a tour. Remember, if you're justifying charging people, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes in the thousands, which is ridiculous. But if
Mhm.
people are willing to pay it, why wouldn't they take it, right?
Right.
And if
Right.
people are willing to pay $1,000 to see a Beyonce, well, that show, they have to leave there going like, "Holy cow, that was unbelievable! Did you
That's
see the
right.
this and the that and the way they were dancing, the costume changes and all the lights and the explosions and everything?" You have to provide that,
Yeah.
and we'll bring it down where that's like a more of a spectacle. But like, George and I, we're musicians and we love like the band Rush, right? Well, do you think the band Rush goes up there and they don't rehearse and they don't practice and they haven't been doing it for now 40 years, and now they're going back on tour this year actually, with what is it, Anika,
Yeah.
and it's going to be unbelievable. You think they're not right now rehearsing their asses off because they know everybody's excited about them coming back?
Right.
So this is what I'm saying about toughness.
Yeah.
And that is toughness. Getting up
Yes.
in the morning when you really don't want to get up. Like I'll do my show. Sometimes I'm telling you, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna not do it this morning. But I already set it up. So my trick is that I set it up the night before and
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna go live,
Right.
whether I'm there or not. You know what I mean? So I have to get up, get splash water on my face, get my coffee, put my clothes on, and do a show. And you know what? That every single time, 100% of the time, by the time I'm done with that show, I feel fantastic. I feel like I did the deed. I did what I said I was gonna do, and it just felt really great. Why? Because it's my choice.
Right.
It's my ethics. It's my personal integrity. It's my self-determinism that I pushed. You see, and that to me is really where the toughness, where it gets really challenging. And there are days where I'm not great, but right now I'm actually in a pretty good spot where I'm pushing myself probably more than ever. On doing a lot of different things, and it's paying off. It's paying off. Go ahead, George.
There's a I was listening to the story of the Navy SEALs were talking about this the other day.
Oh,
Actually, they talk
geez.
about motivationals, right? I mean,
Those
first of all,
guys,
if you know about the Navy SEALs, it's a 70% washout rate.
yeah, they
Okay,
can't
so
get out. Yeah.
that's that first thing right there is you're talking about the baseball teams and all this, and he was saying that he was talking about that.
Yeah.
He was saying, you want to talk about perseverance. You want to
Oof.
talk about toughness. You want to talk about, getting through what he says. He goes, the first thing they do is he goes, they bring you onto the beach in California and they have you lock arms with each other. So there's a whole line of them. He goes, now you think California, okay, it's not that bad. No, they march you into the water,
Oh my
locked
god.
arms. Okay. Then they have you sit in the water as the water's coming up. He goes, now remember, this is like, 4 or 5 in the morning. The water's freaking freezing.
Amazing. Yeah.
Okay. And they have you sit there and just the water's hitting you and you're just gotta like this. And then I don't remember the amount of time they have there doing that. And then they have a doctor come over. They tell them all to stand up. The doctor checks each one for hypothermia.
Oh my gosh.
And then if whoever has hypothermia, they pull them out. But if the other ones don't, they put them back and they sit them down. They do it again.
This is how they train the Rockettes in New York, I hear. It's the
That's
same
why
kind
they're
of
so
thing.
freaking good.
That's why they're so good. It's like,
But
wow.
think about that. I mean, but you look at stuff like that and you're like, yeah, I no wonder these people have this,
Yeah.
and same thing with look at the Olympians, right? The
Oh
Olympics are
my
going
gosh.
on right now. The Olympian and you're talking about at least the
Years.
Navy, yeah, at least the Navy SEALs, okay, you could be in your 20s and whatever the kid. These are kids, a lot
They're
of these,
kids.
right? 15,
That
16
started
years
when they
old.
were like 5.
Exactly. They're getting up at 4 in the morning. They got to go to school, but no, they're in the gym for an hour or two doing their stuff before they even go to school.
Yep.
Talk about dedication. They're learning from the beginning
Yep.
to
Yep.
handle this
It takes
stuff.
a special individual for things like
Yes.
that. I mean,
Yes.
that is like a special, and I was watching this thing on YouTube about Rangers,
Mm.
like Texas Rangers.
Yeah. Right.
I had no idea. I thought Texas Ranger was just like some other type of cop or something.
Right. Right.
Nah, nah. They have like, first of all, they're smart. Like they
Yep.
have the testing that they take is like the highest level of testing that you can imagine. They have to be sharp. They got to be very aware of their environment. They have to be physically fit. So
Right.
I think that probably some of them get grandfathered in maybe and get fat or something, because I've seen some that are a little bit heavier, but they are like work their butts off.
Wow.
One of the things that that's also impressive is when someone does not have the incredible talent, but they have that incredible
The work
drive.
ethic. Yes.
They have that work ethic. And this is where, like people talk about the Michael Jordans, all the time.
Hmm.
It's like where Michael Jordan, he was cut from varsity. We all know that
Right.
story. But this is a guy who just would not quit. Same thing for Kobe and LeBron and those guys. They're there in the morning, shooting. They're there at night shooting. They're there during then they play the game. Then afterwards they come back, they shoot. players are even saying like, man, this guy is like nonstop and
Right.
working everybody. Same thing with guys like I've heard stories of Paul McCartney. Paul
Mm.
McCartney was somebody was telling a story about Paul McCartney and how he couldn't believe because he ran into him and stuff, and Paul actually said, he went up to him and he saw him that he had his guitar and he was like, hey, what are you playing? He said, oh, I'm just working on this little piece. He goes, yeah, it sounds good. He says, it sounds expensive. He says to him, and he's like, yeah, go ahead. He goes, yeah, you mind if I join you? So he, in his mind, he's like, wait a minute,
Right.
is
This
Paul
is Paul
McCartney just
McCartney.
grab the guitar and is gonna sit down and write a song with me or something? Is this really happening right now? So he's like kicking himself. I can't remember. He's telling the story to Rick Beato. I got to remember who it was that was telling the story now. I feel bad that I forgot. But anyway, he said he's like working on this song and he can't believe it. But he's 82. They're young guys saying that he show up and he'll be there all day long. He'll be
Wow.
there all day long in the studio recording with people and working out stuff, and then he'll go somewhere else and he'll go to dinner, come back, be in the studio, and then he'll go home, get some sleep, come back. I mean, he's just a non-stop machine, and it's because he has a special type of drive that people will say, well, yeah, okay, he's rich and everything is, he's it's not okay now.
Right.
He's rich.
Right.
But when he first started, he had the same drive. People who
That's
talk
right.
about him playing at the Cavern he would be there all day. By the time we saw the Beatles, they had thousands of hours on stage performing.
Correct.
By the
Correct.
time we saw them on the Beatles, and I'll tell you another thing, the dedication of the Marx Brothers, and
Mm.
I talked about this before. I did a show on this. We see the Marx Brothers on these black and white films, and we think, wow, they're so funny and they're so
Right.
clever and everything. By the time we saw them on television, on this big screen for the first time, they already been on Broadway for 25 years. By the
Wow.
time we first saw them, they were all in their 40s. The
Unbelievable.
Marx Brothers, when we first saw them, were all in their 40s. They were already so. This is why when you watch like the old things like Coconuts and A Night at the Opera and all, those were plays.
Right.
Those were plays. So they actually had it so well down that it was just easy for them. So this was the dedication that they had. They had
Mhm.
the drive. And not all of them had the drive. And this is another thing that I wanted also to point out is to surround yourself with, you surround yourself with others that are driven, and then you each can help push each other when you don't feel
That's
like
right.
it. And the Marx Brothers are a perfect example. Like they were in vaudeville when they were younger, and Chico said we should be on Broadway. Our show is too good. We should be on Broadway. And Groucho was like, why would people? I'm trying to do his voice. He goes, well, why would people actually watch us? Why would people pay 25 cents to see it? Pay $3 to see us on Broadway when they could see us for 25 cents on vaudeville.
Right.
And he's
Right.
like, because it's on Broadway and it's
Right.
good. And so he pushed, he pushed, and they got on Broadway, and they were huge on Broadway. So you had that one brother, and that Chico was kind of the crazy one of the bunch. They all have their. I know a lot about the Marx Brothers. I've read probably in my life. I've read probably like 15 books,
Wow.
not novels, and not novels, biographies. Like I
Mhm.
read Groucho's biography. I've also read Chico's biography. I also read Harpo's biography. And then there's also separate people that have written, like one by this guy named Archer, who wrote probably one of the best books because he had them involved when he was doing it.
Mm.
It's like a great one. And you follow that journey from the beginning. When you study it and you read it, you see where they were so easily, it could have just been, they had to live through the depression. They
Right.
were poor, very, very poor, and they lived in the Upper East Side. I used to work on the upper. This is what a dork I am. I'll just tell this real quickly. But I found out where they lived. They lived on 273 East 93rd Street. And
Mhm.
so I went to that, that tenement building, and I have a picture of me like standing in front of it. It's all changed. The front of it has been like gentrified. I mean, it's the Upper East Side, which is like, and that building is probably like $20 million now.
Wow.
But at the time it was this tenement building, and they used Harpo used to work at the 92nd Street Y where I worked.
Did he?
Yeah, Harpo used
Interesting.
to work there as a kid, and his job was to set up pins, because in the basement there were two bowling alleys. Now, what's
Huh.
crazy is that I would go down to the basement, and then we had a studio. It was a gym. It was the 92nd Street Y is a big mecca place in New York City, but it had a gym, and in the basement there were actually this gym where they had these classes, this big room, and you still see the bowling lanes.
Really?
Yeah, and they weren't automatic because this was a early turn of the century, right, or the
Mhm.
early part of the century, and so they would have to set up the pins. So he would set up the pins. He would do 5 cents per game. That's what he got paid. And then you have to roll the ball back on this little alleyway on the side. And so Harpo worked there.
Mhm.
Groucho used to go swimming in that pool all the time. That was his pool. As a matter of fact, the Y is over 130 something years old. When the Y was 80 years old, he sent a telegram to the Y saying happy birthday to the Y, and the staff there that I worked for, they knew that I was a big Marx Brothers fan. So
Mhm.
they actually found a copy of that telegram. They made a copy for me of one of the official ones, and had it laminated and gave it to me as a gift. And so I have
Wow.
the actual telegram that he sent to the 92nd Street Y, and in it says, he goes, happy birthday to the 96 Y. He goes, I hope you've changed the water since I was last there. That's what he said. And I was like, yes. So that's like one of my little prized possessions. But the reason I talk a lot about them is because I know their journey, and it
Mhm.
was not an easy one, but there was so much perseverance and toughness.
Right.
There was so much that they had to overcome, not only in the industry, but there was a changing industry.
Right.
Remember, it was radio. So they were on vaudeville because they were a visual act. You had to see them. You couldn't be,
Exactly.
radio was, even though they had great dialogue as well, they were mostly on vaudeville. Then they
Mhm.
went to Broadway. And then when the big screen came on, movies, that was the next thing, so they went right into the movies and became huge, huge stars. And their films were like, some of the best films, some of the earlier ones. Later on, it got a little bit rough, but they were just fantastic. So that's one of the things about being tough,
Mhm.
um and go ahead. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, that's I mean, it's amazing, and you can see it in a lot of a lot of these stories that a lot of people really, like you said, really don't know about. A lot of people
Right,
don't know those stories and stuff like that.
right.
So it's a very inspiring thing.
Yeah, that's why I
And
love reading biographies and watching
yes,
biographies and reading them, and just because you get an insight into the ones that are well written. I'm not talking about the ones that are, not authorized and stuff like that. I'm talking about the ones that the actual person wrote.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I've read Benjamin Franklin's biography. He
mm,
wrote it.
wow,
Thomas Jefferson, he wrote it. They
right,
did not like each other, by the way. They
yeah,
talk about each other but oh no, they respected each other, but they weren't the best of friends. They were always at, but
yeah.
they revolutionized the world. But I love to read that and to see what they had to go through.
Yeah, absolutely,
You
absolutely.
know,
It's interesting. It's a quick thing that you say that they were talking about. I forgot who was talking about it. They were saying how presidential candidates, all the stuff they say about each other during a campaign and election and all this, right? And
yeah,
we're so like shocked at all these things that they say. And you're like, oh my god, how could they say that to blah blah blah. They have letters of back then when like James Madison and all these
oh yeah,
when they were on the campaign, what they said about each other.
right,
And when you read it, you were like, oh my, I mean, they're like this. One of them said like, this person, this person is something to the effect of like he promotes raping and pillaging and all these things. I'm going,
yeah.
holy cow. I was
It's almost
like,
like present time.
I know. I was like, they were saying,
Insane.
so this is not a new thing, the way they
No,
talk
not at
to each
all.
other.
Not at
It's
all.
very interesting. Like,
Yeah, 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 not at all. Yeah, and I think also when you do, get not nostalgic, but when you actually do research history, history is a little tricky because we've been lied to for so long, and the
Right.
school system history. And we're not talking about that history. That's what they want you to learn to play their game. But there's a true history. There's an
Mhm.
actual history, and when you find, what's funny is like old encyclopedias. If you can find, because remember, encyclopedias have been around for quite some time, and
Right.
if you find an encyclopedia from like the 50s,
Mhm.
and it's in decent shape, you're gonna get some information that you're gonna be like, wait, what? That's not what I learned, because at that point they were still teaching some
Mm.
truth.
Right.
And it wasn't until really, well, anyway, we're not gonna go that
Yeah. I
route,
mean,
but
that's a whole nother thing.
that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
whole other show, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
um, but being tough means saying what others don't want to hear.
True.
It means standing on your beliefs, even when it costs you opportunities. And that's a big one, by the way.
Hmm.
When you have an opportunity, but you're like, it's gonna mean that I have to kind of lose my. This is where it's selling your soul. That people talk about. And you'll see an artist be get huge, and then suddenly go nuts.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line they got them. They did something, and anyway, that's another story too. But standing your ground and holding your position and being strong. As an artist, you're constantly being pulled in directions that may not align with who you are. People will try to reshape you, soften you, commercialize you, or silence you. Toughness is knowing who you are and refusing to betray that for applause. That's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
It's being able to look someone in the eye and respectfully say, that's not my vision.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
you, I had someone was trying to, this was recently, this is why it's fresh in my head, but I had someone try to get me to do something in a film, not anything that bad, but they wanted me to, like,
Hmm.
I was like, that's gonna be too tight, stupid. But they wanted me to work on this film that I personally did not think was really well written, and I thought it
Right.
was bad. Now I'm not Scorsese over here. I just didn't think that was so. The person wrote to me and said, "Oh, I guess you must be busy with Tom Cruise and all the other A-listers, huh? To work on this project." And uh and instead of you know your first reaction is to be like, why are you being an ass, why are you
Right.
being a dick, like, what?
Mhm.
I'm just saying that I just don't think I'm saving you.
Yeah.
You're bringing me into something that I'm not really behind, and then you're gonna, if I do it just because I want to be nice, is that gonna help you in your project? It's not gonna help you. So I always take the high road. I always think, and
Sure.
that's another thing about being tough. Mental toughness means that you gotta hold your tongue sometimes. You gotta be like, okay, I don't want to say this. Let me just hold up for a second. Let me get my thoughts in order. Let me try to see what it was that they said and why they would have said that. And maybe I'm missing something, and try to be a little bit more present so you can actually make a good judgment and then say the right thing. So
Right.
I did that. I took a little bit of time. I took some breather. I didn't even reply for like a day. And then the next day, I replied and I said, "No, it's nothing against your project or anything like that. I mean, I understand, and I apologize if I've offended you. I just don't think that the project is really fit for me,
Right.
and that's just how I feel. I'm sorry. Good luck with the project." And I didn't hear back from them, but I felt like, okay, at least I did that, And I've had that happen numerous times, with people that I say no to.
Yeah.
The guy who had Cops, the TV show Cops. I
Hmm.
think I might have told you this before, but I might have said it on the show at somewhere. But the guy had an idea for a show, so he calls me up all excited, and he's like, "John, I got to talk to you. I got a great idea for a show." So the show Cops. Well,
Hmm.
he thought do one called Fireman, and then have a camera guy go in with fire, a fireman,
Right.
fireman.
Right.
And I thought, and I was thinking to myself, I said, I'm sure. First of all, I'm sure that that's been thought of.
Right. Of
Number
course.
one, it's not that. original. Of course, I didn't tell him that, but also I'm thinking, you can't send a cameraman
Into a
into
fire.
a fire with a you know how much you know how camera equipment works.
Yeah.
What are you gonna? You have to have special equipment built around to if he's in the fire. This you can't do that. You know,
Right.
it's not like a guy who's a camera who's behind the cops and he's behind the car and he's yes he's at risk just as much as the
Sure.
cops are at risk. You know
Sure.
what I mean? But a fire? Are you what? You know? So I was telling him that, and he was like, "Yeah, you're just not looking at it the way I'm looking at it." And I was like, "You're right. I'm not. I'm not. I'm telling you that insurance purposes alone, and what fire department? There's another thing I said. What fire department? What ladder? You know, like
Mhm.
one of those. What firehouse is going to allow you to be like, yeah, we got a guy who's gonna do a show. It's called Fireman, and he's gonna walk around with a camera following you into fires, right? And they're gonna be like, what? Yeah, he's gonna when there's a fire, he's gonna go with you. That's going to be so much pressure on them trying to protect the guy. They got to do their job.
Right.
You know, they're going to be focused. Okay, now we're on camera doing this.
Right.
It's a different type of job. You can't just do that. And maybe I don't even know enough. Maybe that is already a thing. You know, I might even Google it later on. And maybe that's already a show. And I don't even know. Maybe they did take all the precautions.
Sure.
This was a while ago. It could be a show right now that I don't even know. You know, it could be a popular thing on Hulu. And I say, who knew?
But so and going back to what you said about holding your tongue and being able to, you know, when you have people saying those things to you. Another thing that I think is a big deal is having not personalizing everything. Okay. And I think that's a big deal because
explain that a little bit further.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really a very basic concept, right? It's like, you know, when people, when somebody criticizes or when somebody says something, whatever, when you were talking about that thing before about, you know, about what the guy was trying to get you to be in it or whatever. And he said, I think you're Tom Cruise and all this way, you know, but the way you took the high road and you said, no, I'm not going to personalize this. I'm not going to turn this into a war between me and you because you told me and I told you. And we, you know, so you kind of took that high road, and some people would expect you to like it become personal. And then you start this whole back and forth and this argument.
They almost feel better because if you did take the low road,
right? Exactly.
It would justify their nasty comment.
Exactly, because the fact that they made a comment like that shows you that the character of the person.
And I'm glad that I didn't take it because that right there was a clear indication that it's somebody I don't want to work for.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was just it's a real clear thing. So it's taking in having that person. And again, he wasn't angry at me.
Right. Correct.
You know, he's angry for something else.
Sure.
I just happened because I would never say anything disrespectful about somebody's project, but I will say, you know, it's not really right for me. I don't think.
Right.
You know, and there's actors that do that. You know, it's just not right for me. I don't feel it.
Right. Exactly. You know? And the point is that, you know, there's this phrase that, you know, Wayne Dyer always said, and it always stuck with me when he talked about, you know, getting angry and personalizing everything. And he always said, you know, there's no shortage of things out there that you can get offended by. Right.
Oh, man.
There's no, he goes, you know, you could walk around for the rest of your, right. He said, you can walk around the rest of your life looking for occasions to be offended by somebody. Okay?
Oh yeah.
And he
look what's happening in today's world, right? I mean,
well, exactly. So, and that's, and this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that you have to be able to separate that and say, okay, you know, that's fine. You know, and I'm going to take the high road. If you criticize me, that's fine. You know, that could actually drive you to make something better and to be better, you know?
Right.
So that's huge.
And I think also, especially, when you're still like trying to get into groups or something, you know what I mean? Like it's really amazing to me when you find a huge group that you actually feel comfortable with, and by a huge, I don't know, I'm talking about a film crew or a film cast or whatever that you're involved in, or a band or something,
Right.
where everyone really, really, truly gets along. It's a very, very rare thing, believe it or
Yeah.
not. It's, why? Because what? I don't, I think it has a lot to do with everything that we're talking about right now. I think it has to
Hmm.
do with people personalizing
Yes.
what somebody says, the egos and all that stuff, that the
Yep.
cliche stuff, but it's is legitimate. Um, and so that's where you have to really then be tough, because you may get into a really great situation that you think is a really great situation. It may be a financially great situation, but you're thinking to yourself, this is like hurting me. I
Right.
feel sick going into this place, or I'm not happy anymore, or I'm losing, and that's a certain level of toughness.
That's
Now
right.
some people will justify and say, well, I got a family, I have to do this. And well, you don't have to. You can actually decide you're not going to, and then get in communication with your spouse and your partner or whatever, and say, I really want to find something that really is going to fulfill me and really provide for the family, rather than just a cope thing.
Right.
And that's what people do. They cope. They
Yep.
struggle, they struggle, they struggle, they cope, they cope, they cope. You're wrong, because you're willing, you don't want to struggle like them. So
Hmm.
but they're struggling, they're struggling, they're struggling, they're struggling, and they keep on that cope mechanism, which never amounts to anything. You end
Correct.
up being stagnant.
Right.
You could be in a cope for 30, 40 years. My last film was that. My
Hmm.
last film, and on that day, was about Robert, the main character. 30 years, he just played it safe, and he kept his one job that at the end, on his last day before he retired, he kind of was like, God, this really sucks. And I'm going to tell these people what I think. And I think that that's part of the challenge, is to have that integrity, you
Yes.
and to not be afraid to push through the negativity when you're there.
Yeah.
You may be able to actually change that group. It doesn't mean you have to leave immediately. It may be that you are the actual missing ingredient to actually elevate the group, and to point out things, and to maybe make it right. You know,
Hmm.
so if you push through, let me see. You also have to, yeah, no, just saying, but push through the negativity. There will be people who talk down to you. Right now, I'm short, so a lot of people do, but my wife, my kids,
Everybody.
yeah, I was gonna Peter Dinklage, everybody. That's how short I am. But people who underestimate you, uh, people who underestimate you, people who try to make you feel small because they feel small.
Yeah.
You know, the industry can be filled with egos, insecurities, and power games. Toughness is not letting their behavior dictate your self worth.
Right.
It's developing a thick skin without developing a cold heart. This is what I want to make sure that
Yes.
we
It's a
point out.
nuance there. Yeah.
You can be the kind, you can be loving, you can have a warm heart, you can be caring, you could be the one that people say that he's such a nice guy,
Hmm.
but also having the mental capacity to say no when you have to,
Right.
and keep that personal integrity. That is like super, super important. It's staying disciplined when others are distracted, staying focused when others are critical.
Hmm.
Because in our business, there's nothing but criticism, because that is the business that you chose.
That's right.
Everything is being watched and being criticized. Everything is being judged. You're in the business of being judged, and it's okay, but you have to be strong enough to be able to take that criticism. Some of it comes soft, some of it comes really hard, some of it, gives you a feedback that you can utilize to actually become better.
Right.
Others are knives in your chest or on your back that will try to weaken you. All of it isn't the same thing. All of it is still that mental toughness,
Yes.
all of it. Because you could also be called wonderful and wonderful and wonderful, and start believing it, and
Yep.
then start being full of yourself, like you're wonderful, like you're wonderful. Everything is great. Everything's great. Well, you have to, that's mental strength. people who are, celebrities who want all the blue M&Ms taken out or whatever. That's just, they fall into this weird category where they've thought that they don't like it, so they're going to actually have somebody else do it for them.
Hmm.
And whatever it is that they do. I heard that there were a couple of people that, what was the guy who's, I don't want to mention his name here because he's not worth it, but he was having his staff like go out and buy certain things at a certain time of the night because that's what he wanted to eat, and they couldn't find it open, and they had to go out all night looking for it and driving all around town to find something that he wanted to eat, because he's a jerk, and
Hmm.
it's like, so he ended up believing whatever he was told,
Right.
whatever the the bank account was telling him. He believed it. There's mental toughness.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
have it at all points of the industry.
And I think also that we have to be careful this day and age to understand that
Chupacabra. I
yeah,
know.
that
You gotta be
there's
careful.
that.
Chupacabras is still out there. People be thinking no, but it is out there. You gotta have mental toughness for the chupacabra. Go ahead.
That's exactly what I said this morning.
Yeah.
But no, in this day and age where there's more and more of the way the culture's going, just overall, in terms of everything is like, we can get into participation trophies, right? And all that type of stuff and everything that's going on with there, which is really anti-toughness if you really think
Oh,
about it,
it's
right?
the reverse of it.
It's the reverse of
It's
all that. It's,
weakening people.
again, I talk about it a lot, even on the health side and the stuff that you've heard, but you see it in a lot of different ways, right? Where it's okay. It's okay. It's not your fault. It's okay. It's okay just to be this way. It's okay just to be average. It's
Right.
okay to just, and a lot of that it's reared its ugly head in the last 20 years.
Mhm.
And you're seeing that. And I think that when you go back to,
These
we
are
go
the kids.
correct.
Right now, we are dealing. They're
this is
30,
these are
35 years old. These are the
correct.
ones
These
that
are
have
the kids.
place trophies, that think that
Absolutely.
they're going to be loved the same way and be validated the same way when they do something wrong. It's like, you know, just to piggyback on what you just said, and I'll let you finish.
Yeah, yeah.
But you said, they say it's okay to be
Hmm.
this way. It's
Hmm.
okay to not. It's okay to not be okay, right?
Right,
That's like
right,
a thing that people say, right? And to a degree, I get that. It's okay to be upset. It's not okay to not do something about it, to not be that
correct.
way.
Right,
It's the
right,
idea that you can be this way and you don't have to change at all.
right,
The idea of when people say to you, no, you don't change. You're perfect the way you are. No, you're not.
no,
We all
right,
need to improve. We're
right.
all improving, constant improving. No, you're not okay, great the way you are. And then of course, in the health side, you can
Yeah.
talk more about that. This whole body thing that's been promoted, where
Hmm.
unhealthy people are on the front cover of magazines because they're beautiful,
Right,
and for a fact that they are very unhealthy.
right. Exactly. And, and again, it doesn't even have to be the health thing. It could be any area of your life. One of the
Yeah.
things I talk about on my show is self-improvement, right? And constantly improving. I'm in my 50s and I'm still trying to improve in so many different ways. I still have
Yeah.
goals to meet. I still have things that I want to do. Why? Because when you look at improvement and when you look at life, the way life works, right? We know that it's not just a steady state. You're actually going down as
Yeah.
time goes in. Just to keep that steady state, you've got to do more. And if you
Correct.
want to really hit it and you want to kind of get that hockey stick, you have to do even more, which is
Correct.
continuously improve. You hear this thing about the average person doesn't read one book once they leave school. Okay. That's the truth. They don't improve. They just go with the flow. This is why, and I talked about, for example, one of the clips that I put out recently was about being different,
Yes,
about
I shared that one. Yeah.
right, not being afraid of being different. Why?
Right.
Because this is exactly why you could take any industry. You could take the health industry, you could take finance, you could take anything, and you'll see it. It's the 1%, right, that
That
are
did something
different, that are the ones that are successful in health and
different.
money and all these things. Why? Because they were different. It's
Correct.
that other 99% that went just with everybody else,
Right.
right?
It's
That
Steve
1% of those
Jobs
people,
and
right? The for example, if you look at finance, the 1%, they were the ones that were okay with risk. They were the ones that were mentally tough. They were
correct.
okay to risk money, failure,
Yeah.
all these things to get to where they were,
Correct.
right? And that's the big thing. And again, in going back to what I was saying initially, in this day and age, it's getting harder because these young kids are not being taught that. These young
Right.
kids are being taught, no, stay where you are. It's okay. You're, like you said, just the way you are, but that means don't improve. And to
Right.
me, that's not, that shouldn't be the way it is.
No. I mean, I always think that the reason that we have what's going on, and let me backtrack for a second. I don't, the media tells you that the world is really, really bad.
Right.
We are looking, if you go down the street, if you interview 100 people and you talk to them and you ask them, do you think that someone who didn't win or didn't work hard deserves the same thing as someone who did work hard?
Mm,
Just ask 100 people.
yeah.
You're gonna
Yeah.
get, you may get a couple of crazy people, but
Right.
you may get, you're gonna get 99% of the people saying like, no, I don't think somebody who, that is the majority.
Yeah.
What you're seeing right now that's happening is not the majority. That is
Right.
just being covered.
Yep.
It's just being covered extensively. And that's what's being promoted to make people believe that the world is that
That's
way.
right.
The world is not that way.
That's right.
The world is not that way. There are people right now doing amazing things. Even the music industry that we all look at, all AI and all the and Spotify ripping everybody off. There's amazing musicians out there right now. I listen to a lot of them. I'm here in Nashville. Incredible music being put together right now. Jazz, blues,
Mhm.
rock, all of it. They're out there right now. What's being promoted is different. When we're
Mhm.
talking about what's the Super Bowl show. That I had a big, I put out something that kind of got me a little bit of a heat from a few people.
Story of your life.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, you know, uh, that to me seems fabricated. It seems being pushed. It
Mm.
seems, it's easier to think that you can do some. It also gives people like the idea. See, I used to look at guys, at musicians, like I cannot do that. That's why I love them.
Right.
I see
Yes.
Stevie Ray Vaughan play, and I'm like, good lord, I cannot do that. I see, anybody, any of the guys, Rush. We see Rush,
Mhm.
and we're like, man, we cannot do that.
Right.
You know, it seems like now you look at the guys out there, it's like, I can do that.
Mhm.
I can do that very easily. As a matter of fact, with the
Yes.
software, I can have my voice do whatever I want. That's very easy.
Yes.
That song that they wrote, that's a very, very juvenile, very simplistic song. It's not a complicated song. I can do that. It's no longer special. This is
Right.
what George was talking about, being different.
Yes.
Why we loved Van Halen was because what is he doing? I had no idea when I first heard what he was doing. I didn't know what he was doing. That's the kind of stuff that that makes it more special. That's the difference.
Right.
And in order to be that, you got to be different.
Mhm.
You got to be different. Now, we're naming these legends here. I mean, it's very rare that something like that comes along. Right now, the only one that I can really look at is Bruno Mars as far as like an R&B.
Mhm.
I think of John Mayer as like one
Right.
of the greats.
Right.
I think that, believe it or not, I think Justin Bieber is going to become much bigger than what people have. I think he went through a rough period. This guy can sing,
Yeah.
dance, play guitar, play piano. He plays drums. He writes. He does a lot of things. I think he found Jesus now, and he's more spiritual. He's doing a lot more stuff. I saw him recently in something. I was like, this guy's freaking good.
Right.
He was able to break away, but look what happened when he wanted to break away, right?
Yeah.
Everybody bashed him. He went down. And this is what happens when you don't play the game, right?
That's right.
And this is where the mental toughness really gets you, because this industry is so enticing. They
Yes.
want you to do things. They want you to be here. You got Bad Bunny there, going, oh, gonna gira que no mola menacina, gonna pura que tina cantola que la. I'm like, okay, I mean, it is a thing. He had some songs there that were very, very positive. A
Mhm.
lot of the lyrics that were positive, and then he has this tremendous filth. And I'm like, is there any way that you can possibly just go one way and just keep it clean? Anyway, I mean, even Cardi B, who I think I think on stage she is hot. She's beautiful. She's hilarious. The way she talks, everything she does is very entertaining. The stuff that's coming out of her mouth is garbage. It's terrible. If she was just to take, like, you look at, like, what was her name? Young. She was a rapper. Well, let's look at, like, Salt and Pepper. you
Right.
know, back in the day, right? They talked about being, but they kept it, they were clean. Queen Latifah, you
Hmm.
know, there's a bunch of others, but for me, it's sort of like there's a choice being made, and I don't know if that choice is always the artist's choice. And maybe it
Agreed.
is, and maybe I've missed the boat on something, but I don't think so. I think that it starts off as one thing. I think Sam, what's his name?
Oh, Sam. Yeah, Sam Smith.
Sam Smith. He came on dressed nice too. He's singing, great voice. It came
Yeah.
on stuff, and now he's in a big giant bubble,
Right.
black bubble thing. I don't know. He's wearing a weird thing. Again, maybe that's who he always was, and he just wanted to get. I don't know. It just doesn't. It feels not authentic. I think he's a much better talent than what we've seen so far. If he just did the talent,
But doesn't this go back to the mental toughness? Okay, so again, going back to um, the whoever the managers or whoever's making the decisions back in the day saying, okay, you should do this, and you should end
right?
up saying, okay, well, going back to when you talked about saying, I didn't want to be in that film, I didn't want to do, and what about you saying, well, you know what? No, I don't want to do that. That's against what I feel is right, or that's against my morals, or that's against whatever. Writing a song about my private parts is not something I want to do because I want kids to be able to listen to my show. Oh, and they
Right.
tell me, well, but that's going to sell albums. Well, okay, but I'm not going to be able to sleep at night.
See, the thing is, it's not going to sell albums.
Well, I
It
mean,
somehow,
but
because
it's
first of all, think about this for a second. You cannot play any of it on the radio.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is but there's a reason why the Cardi B's of the world and her and what's her name, who were doing basically a sex show on TV. Okay, I forgot the other one who was doing it, and they were talking about their private parts. Well, millions of people were watching that.
I know. Well, what about the hypocrisy of the song? Remember, I think we talked about this. That the Christmas song "Santa Baby."
Right.
During that same year when they were actually canceling Santa Baby because they thought it was a sexist song and
Yeah. Right.
male whatever. Um, what is it? Yeah. No, I guess misogyn
Yeah, it was
misogynistic
misogyny,
kind of
sexist, and all
song.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing. While at the same time when that song was being canceled, the Grammys gave Best Song of the Year to WAP.
Yes. Right.
Cardi B's WAP.
Cardi B.
The
Right.
same
Right.
day. The same at the same
There
moment.
you go.
That tells you where the priorities are. That means that there's something happening, and we have to become our own tough cheerleaders.
Correct.
We have, because being an artist, you may be around a lot of people, but you're always really alone.
Yeah.
You're in your own thoughts, you're in your own create. People don't know what the hell you're talking about sometimes, and you stop halfway through a sentence. I had a film that was it was just an idea for a film. I still have it. I'm gonna shoot it, but it's just a weird film. It was with shadows. Anyway, it was this weird idea that I had, and I wrote it up, and I was trying to explain it to somebody, and they were like, they just did not understand what I was saying. And I was like, and then I stopped. I was like, yeah, I gotta work it out. I have to work out how to just be better at it. I got to
Right.
work out how to better communicate the idea,
Mhm.
and that mental toughness was not something that I was born with, by the
Right.
way. You know what I
Right.
mean? It was like something that I developed throughout years, and I developed through through heartache and learning and realizing that that's just what we have to do. So
Yeah.
um
I mean, I think, but I mean, it's really I mean, mental toughness or discipline, and right in many of those aspects. I mean, that is a really a learned thing when you think about it, right? I mean, it's some of us come through it because of just hard times that you went through, right?
right,
If you're born in the South Bronx and you went through a hard time, sometimes that in of itself can just give you the mental toughness,
correct,
right? Or if maybe you weren't born in that way, but you have a mentor who says, these are the things that you should do and these are the things you're going to encounter, and kind of helps you through that.
right.
There's different ways to do it, but to me, again, not everybody learned. This is where you go back to the 1%, where you say that 1% figured it out and was able to have that mental toughness, right? Or
Right.
own a business, or be a musician or be a baseball player or whatever it is, because
Mhm.
they were able to persevere through those things. And the rest, you know, maybe they worked hard too, but they just didn't do what that person did.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't. It's so precise sometimes,
Yes,
and then it's also unknowing.
correct.
Like I saw this interview with uh uh David Lynch, right?
Hmm.
David Lynch, filmmaker, passed I think last year.
Hmm.
Very creative guy. His stuff was like kind of kind of really out there in Twin Peaks
Yeah.
and those kinds of things. Blue Velvet, which was great. But they asked him. He was on Charlie Rose, and it's an older interview, and they asked him, um, have you been to therapy? Have you ever been to therapy? And he said, yeah. He goes once, and he said, oh really? Why? How come? He said, well, yeah, and the way he talks. Well, I asked the doctor why can this actually change my creativity? Can this change my creativity? And the doctor said, I cannot lie. Yes, it can. It can change me creatively. And he goes, and I said, thank you very much. And I walked out because his creativity is his. It's what
Yes,
he has,
exactly.
whether he feels whatever it is. It's like he doesn't want to lose that,
Right.
whatever that is, and maybe he could have been better. I don't know what would have happened, but he was too attached to it and too afraid to lose that.
Hmm.
And then Charlie Rose asked him, "What is creativity?" He said, "I don't know."
Right.
He said, "I don't know. I do know that it makes people feel good,
Yep.
and I know that when you hit upon something, it does excite you. You
Right.
get a little tingly. You get tunnel vision where you're suddenly now writing or whatever you're doing. You're kind of like zoned into whatever that is. But I don't know what it is. And that to me is the right answer. It's
Yeah.
like it's a high level of spiritual creativity. It's the highest level that we can create spiritually, in my opinion, anyway. Um, that's very influential to other human beings.
Right.
If
Right.
you're creating something that's influential to other people, you're a creative person. If you're creating something that harms or then you're being pushed by some other entity.
Right. But it's also going to be even better and get better if you are a person that enjoys that process yourself.
Right.
So, whether it's, you know, going back to the Olympics, those folks are going back to how many hours and hours and hours do you and I spend rehearsing and or practicing our instrument. Okay. I loved every second of
Oh,
it.
me too.
It was blood, sweat, and
I
tears. It
would
was like,
forget the time
yes, yes. I loved every
you
every single
playing, and then
second
you
of it,
realize,
because
wait a minute, like 8 hours just
I I remember that I used to, I would go and I'd be like, okay, I'd be looking at the time saying, okay, you know what, from 3 to 4, I'm going to be in that room working on stuff, and I enjoyed that process.
I
It
love
didn't
it.
matter if I wasn't playing Madison Square Garden, or I wasn't playing,
Oh, I
I
yeah.
could have been in between bands. not
Right.
even playing. But the fact that I was just sitting there and playing, and I was out. I
Yeah.
was out learning concepts and doing things and getting better. Again, going back to getting better,
Yeah.
right? Getting better. Same thing with the podcast, right? I love the process.
Me
Whether
too.
it's 2 people listening or 2,000 people listening, I just love the process of doing it because I have a good time doing it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And then, and to me, that process, you're going to get better by default if you enjoy just doing that process.
Yes. Yes. 100%. And I think also, when you realize that the process, is part of it,
Yes.
it's not a
Right.
separate thing.
Correct.
It's not like, oh, I got to do the process so I can have this thing. No, the process is the thing.
Is the thing. Yes.
It's all together. And sometimes, yeah, you do need to be tough on that. The inner strength it takes to survive and thrive in this business is about having real toughness.
Hmm.
We break down what it means to stand firm. That's what we've been doing here. You have to endure rejection, protect your integrity at all costs. Because, and here's the point. Because if you're going to build something lasting in this industry, you have to be strong enough to weather the storms and bold enough to keep your voice. Yeah, to keep your voice when the pressure is on. And this is always pressure. It's always
Yes.
going to be on. And when you, again, that process contains pressure,
That's right.
whether it's pressure you put on yourself or whether the industry or whether you're seeing something happening and you're like, oh man, I can't believe this is happening now. Whatever it is, that pressure comes with the program. It's
That's right.
part of it.
That's
It's
right.
just built in. And the more that you can actually practice, I mean, when I went on, like now, I've been playing a lot lately, so
Hmm.
I've been feeling really comfortable playing. And we towards the end of our playing, when we hit the stage, I was very comfortable with whatever we were going to do because I knew those songs inside and out.
That's
I
right.
knew what I wanted to do. I knew also that sometimes I wanted to try something new in the middle of it and
Hmm.
just kind of just do something else, because I was so confident in it. It's the same thing when you're learning lines and you're working on a script and you're developing a character. You study it so much that when you show up on set, you already got this guy. You already know
Hmm.
what you're doing. You're already you're approaching it with that voice in your head because you've done the work.
Right.
This is all work.
That's right.
This is work. And this is the fun. I said this to somebody the other day. They were talking a lot about doing something and gonna and gonna and I'm
Hmm.
gonna. And I'm saying, because I used to do that, but you're alive now.
That's right.
You're not ready to be born. There's nothing coming new that's not already here right now.
Yep.
Maybe you want to get a new guitar, fine. Maybe you want to get a new whatever, a new camera if you're shooting, fine, okay. But you don't need anything. You're in it right now. Every second that you're not, somebody else is. Every
That's right.
second that you're not doing it because you think you're waiting for a thing, you're losing time because that's the one thing we will never get back is
That's
time.
it.
Everything
That's
else
right.
we'll get. We can get new cameras and all that, but and I would think about the I've done like 10 film. I'm working on my 11th film, right?
Wow.
And I start thinking to myself, I haven't made any money. You know what I mean? That first, I mean, I've gotten jobs from my films and I've made money that way, but not directly.
Right.
But had I not just dove in and have the audacity to think, oh, I'm going to be a filmmaker now. What? Who the hell are you? Why? Well, I wrote a script. I got some actors. I got cameras. I got somebody to edit. I didn't know how to edit at all at the time.
Right.
And I put it all together. And there's my first film, you know. Um, then the second, then the third, so it's like if I look back now, I think to everything that I've done now, all the work that I get, all the attention that I get, all the money that I make, it's because I did those films.
That's right.
Because I had that. I have now a body of work that people can look at. They can go to my IMDb and see I did these things. Either I was in the film, but there's 10 of my own that I was in a few of those. And I have 3 right now that I'm editing that I still haven't even put out yet. Imagine that. I got 2
Wow.
films that I have 1 film that I finished, but I'm afraid to put it out because there's some cursing in it. There's another one that I haven't even edited yet, and there's another one that I haven't edited yet. So I have plus I'm working on my 11th one. So I really have 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 films ready to, out there.
Wow.
Well, I didn't have any, I didn't wait, and what was it? It was mental something. I don't want to call it
Yes.
mental toughness, like I'm some tough guy. It
Right.
was some type of mental something that I had where I said to myself, why not?
Right.
What's the worst that could happen? People hate it? Okay, that's fine. It's like it's part of the game, that people are sometimes not going to like it. Did everyone love my film? No. No, sometimes, it was fascinating experience. But my point on saying all this is that sometimes the toughest thing to do is to start.
Yes.
And sometimes the toughest thing to do is to validate your own knowingness on that you can do something.
That's right.
Validating yourself that yes, you do have the talent, you do have the audacity. I'm me, John Henry Soto. I'll give you permission. Do it.
Hmm.
Go do it. Get out there. There are people doing it right now who are not even good and being successful.
Yeah.
You may be the next thing. So I always say, just get out there and do it. Don't worry about what people are gonna think.
Agreed.
And that's where the real toughness comes.
That's right.
So as we wrap this evening, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. George and I appreciate anybody that watches this, whether you're watching it today, February 22nd, 2026, or you're watching it in 150 years when it's in some database somewhere, and you're watching these two goons talk about it. But who knows? But we definitely don't take it for granted, and we appreciate you watching this. Before we wrap up here, I want to say happy birthday to my daughter tomorrow. She's going to be 15 years old.
Wow. Nice.
Beautiful daughter. God bless her. I love you so much. 15 years old. I can't believe it. We just brought her home.
Mm-hmm.
And you know very well how it is, George. Your kid is in college now, and it's an amazing thing. And I love being a dad more than anything. I love the interaction that we see them learn. It's not an easy job, but you do have to have toughness.
That's right. Definitely.
Definitely toughness. So, George, thank you very much, as always.
It's a pleasure, sir.
It's a pleasure. And we will see you all next week. I'll be here live tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. If you want to come in and tune in, it's about 11 hours. So I will see you all tomorrow morning. Take care of yourselves. God bless you all. Take care of each other, because we're all we have. And as always,